The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
Steve Angeli is heading to Syracuse, and what a massive addition this is for Fran Brown.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Steve Angeli is 6'2", 205 pounds. He's got 2 years of college eligibility remaining, and he is coming from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Steve Angeli is a top 20 transfer quarterback on On3 and on 24/7 Sports. And get this, he actually ranks higher than Ricky Collins on both major recruiting services. Does it mean that Steve Angeli is better? I guess time will tell, but the major recruiting services are saying Steve Angeli is better than Ricky Collins. It's not by much, but that's what they are saying, and we'll talk about the quarterback controversy later on here on this show. Steve Angeli is a New Jersey kid. He was offered by Syracuse in high school, but it was obviously a different regime. Fran Brown and company, this is only their second year. Before that, it was Dino Babers' era. Dino Babers and his staff were the ones who offered Steve Angeli in high school, but still, the connections are kind of there between Steve Angeli and Syracuse. On top of that, Steve Angeli's high school coach is the brother of Syracuse's quarterbacks coach, Nunzio Campanelli. Folks, relationships matter. We talk a lot about money in the NIL era because obviously it's super duper important. Players will come and go based on the money. But oftentimes when the money is close, players won't necessarily take every last dime. Some of them will, but not all of them will. Sometimes it really does come down to relationships. And in this case, do I know how much money Syracuse offered Steve Angeli compared to other schools that may or may not have been involved? I don't. But what I will tell you is that the past connections between Steve Angeli and Syracuse did not hurt. Evidently, it didn't because, well, he's with Syracuse football now. Also, fun fact, for those that don't know, you might want to take a look at Syracuse's schedule in 2025 because the Orange are playing at Notre Dame on November 22nd. So we got perhaps a revenge game on our hands right there. Scouting reports suggest that he is a pro-style quarterback. He is accurate, not the most mobile, but you know what? Syracuse just had a pro-style quarterback that wasn't very mobile, Kyle McCord, and he did quite well. Not going to sit here and say that Steve Angeli is on the level of Kyle McCord, but it doesn't hurt to have a pro-style quarterback in the system, just like how Kyle McCord was. Let's get to the stats of Steve Angeli, and then later on, where did those stats come from? Angeli is dressed in 21 games over at Notre Dame, and he has been with the Fighting Irish for 3 seasons. However, he's never gotten the opportunity to be the full-time starter over at Notre Dame. There has always been a quarterback that has been blocking him, and well, I guess he had an opportunity to win the job this spring, and he didn't win the job. But Angeli has thrown 80 career passes. Ricky Collins, on the other hand, who Syracuse got from LSU earlier this offseason, has only thrown 7 career passes. In Angeli's, I know it's only 80 attempts, but he has looked really, really strong. Over 70% completion percentage. Over 11 yards per attempt. The exact number for those that really want to know, 11.59 yards per attempt. 10 touchdowns in 80 attempts. That's good. And 1 interception. He only has 36 career rushing yards. Again, he's not the most mobile quarterback in the world, but Those numbers are really strong. But where are the numbers coming from with Steve Angeli? Well, since he has been the backup quarterback at Notre Dame for a couple of years now, you would probably assume that they are coming from garbage time, and you would be correct. However, he has had a couple of moments where he's looked really good in non-garbage time situations. But let's go through it all, okay? Angeli in 2023, he was 8 for 11 with 130 yards and 2 touchdowns against Tennessee State, and that was a 56-3 win for Notre Dame. He also went 6 of 7 for over 90 yards and a touchdown against Pitt that year. That was a 58-7 win. But the most encouraging part about that 2023 season for Steve Angeli was that he started the Sun Bowl against Oregon State, where he went 15 of 19 for over 230 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Then you get to 2024. He plays more in garbage time as well. He has an appearance, I believe, in week 1 for Notre Dame where he goes 6 for 9, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns versus Purdue. That was a 66-7 win for Notre Dame over the worst team in the Big Ten last year in Purdue. However, the most encouraging part about Steve Angeli in 2024, he made a brief appearance in the college football semifinal game against Penn State, and he led a field goal drive at the end of the first half where he went 6 of 7 for 44 yards. So overall with Steve Angeli, he has not played a ton, but when he has played, he has looked really, really strong. He's at Notre Dame. There has always been someone that has been blocking him. 2022, Steve Angeli is a true freshman. You're not seeing the field as a true freshman at quarterback unless you are exceptional or there was an emergency in the quarterback room. Does not happen very often. And Drew Pine was there anyway, and he actually had a pretty good year for Notre Dame in 2022. 2023, you got Sam Hartman, who was the starter. 2024, they brought in Riley Leonard, who, well, we know what Riley Leonard did. He led them to the national championship game before they ultimately fell to Ohio State. Overall, talk about this more in the next segment. Steve Angeli makes Syracuse football a better team than they were yesterday.
The NBA playoffs roll on, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll win $250 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. FanDuel makes it easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. There's so many ways to bet on your game, your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You can also check out some odds on the NFL draft. The over-under for running backs drafted in the first round, 2.5. Odds on the over, plus 110. The under, minus 152. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Alabama adds a new tight end transfer.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alabama has been expecting a tight end commitment. At least Alabama fans have been. We figured it would be a tight end transfer from Troy. Well, instead, Alabama gets a tight end transfer from Jack Sammarco. Is that we're going with? I think that's how I say it.
It's Jack Sammarco. That's right.
Jack Sammarco from West Virginia. And I was all prepared to make the joke that his receiving statistics in his West Virginia career, 1 catch for 4 yards, are actually worse than Andre Smith's at Alabama, which was 1 catch for 2 yards and a touchdown against Oklahoma State. But they actually call his a lateral. I didn't realize that. They actually say his was a rush, because I guess the ball was thrown behind the line of scrimmage. And that
what game was that in? You said Oklahoma State
Independence Bowl.
That's right. That did. God, that is right. Yeah.
Javi Arenas, I think, also had a punt return for a touchdown of like 85 yards in that game. I mean, I was at that game, by the way. And one of my friends always makes fun of me because when I made the
Joe
reservation,
Cons. That was the Joe Cons game, right?
it was the Joe Cons game. And the funny thing about that game, I was at that game with my brother and a couple other friends, and one of the friends was like, I mean, I apparently made the worst hotel reservations in the world. They were like, "You got us on the tarmac of the Shreveport airport." I mean, out here. But anyway, and then the other thing that was funny, my brother who had bet on the game and who was having fun at the Shreveport casinos was like, "Let's get out of here. We're going to lose. This is going to be awful," because we were losing pretty big, I think, for a moment. And the friends were like, "No," and I was like, I was sort of indifferent because I'm not one of those guys that'll sit through a bad movie. I'll leave. And so we ended up leaving. Well, we missed Andre Smith's lone touchdown in his Alabama career because we left, and that guy's never let us live that down. But anyway,
Freshman. I think he was a freshman that year.
it was 06.
06. I think he was a freshman.
I think he was. Yeah, he was a freshman. He was a freshman. That's right.
Crazy.
Because it was Mike Shula's last year.
He was the best player on the team, probably. I mean, I have to go back and review, but he might have been the best player on the team, even though he's a freshman.
DJ Hall was on that squad. Ken Darby was on that squad. I'm looking at the stats right now. Jimmy Johns led us in rushing. Ken Darby had 10 carries for 15 yards. It wasn't exactly an offensive showcase, but who cares? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Jack Sammarco.
Yeah, we had trouble stopping that inside trap, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, maybe we should just keep talking about this Independence Bowl game. I'm not mad at Jack Sammarco, but he only has one catch for 4 yards. And if you're looking at the thumbnail, if you're looking at the YouTube of this podcast, I found a thumbnail for him from his high school days. That's who that is. People are going to be like, that guy's not even from West Virginia. That's from his high school days, because he has no West Virginia West Virginia University highlight that I could put on the thumbnail that I could find legally. So, look, I'm all for this. It doesn't bother me in the least. Some people are like, Jack Sammarco, what now? I mean, we need a tight end. We need one. And he seems like a big dude. He's 6'5". He's a big dude, so I'm okay with it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. As we said all along, and as we predicted all along, Alabama had very few needs in the transfer portal, and we predicted a very quiet portal for Alabama, and it has been. Even bringing in a tight end that no one listening to this show had heard of before yesterday, because this was not a prominent player at West Virginia in terms of the starting lineup, though he did play in all 13 games as a freshman last year, as a redshirt freshman.
Does that make things better or worse that he only has one catch for 4 yards?
I think it's just non-relevant because we're not bringing him in to catch balls. I mean, I think they're bringing him in to be that blocking tight end. And by the way, Alabama has Brody Dalton on campus and is working to sign Brody Dalton, or working to get Brody Dalton to commit to Alabama today too. So I think, it's a situation where adding to the tight end room is clearly an emphasis. Adding blocking tight ends is the emphasis. They're comfortable, obviously, with Josh Cuevas as the receiving threat. And Danny Lewis can also catch the ball. And he's probably, if we had to pick a tight end, okay, who's going to play the most snaps at tight end in 2025? I think it's Danny Lewis. And I think Cuevas is going to be a very close second, if not outright tied with Danny. But Danny can catch it. Cuevas can certainly catch it. And then you're bringing blockers off the bench in waves, hopefully, with Jack Sammarco, who played in 13 college games at the Power 4 level a year ago. And he's 6'5", 250. I know out there you may have seen him listed somewhere at 238. That was his high school prospect size. That was 2 years ago. He's up over 250 pounds now. So this is a blocking third tackle type, very similar to Brody Dalton. And this is exactly what they're looking for. Is this going to make some sort of transfer portal headlines? No, of course it's not. When you sign an inline blocking tight end, that's about the least sexy guy possible you can add, right, in terms of the transfer portal age, where, if your last name needs to be Iyamalava to create a lot of headlines. But this is what Alabama needed, and it's not expensive. Again, find it weird. This kid's from West Virginia. He's actually originally from Cincinnati, where Alabama seems to be creating quite the recruiting stronghold with Cam Calhoun, Justin Hill.
Looking at Sincere Johnson, isn't he from that area?
Yeah, and we offered a big nose guard from Sincere Johnson's high school.
And Devontae Smith, the other one, was from there.
Correct. And Sean Alexander right across the river in Kentucky. He had to cross a state line in a river, but he's very close by.
But it is true. The Cincinnati airport is in Kentucky. I'm pretty sure that's correct.
I think it's like you literally, there's like a river that separates Ohio and Kentucky right there, right? And like when you're coming into land in the Cincinnati airport, I know you almost look like you're landing in that river, which is Kentucky.
Yeah. Do you think the Devontae Smith that transferred to Notre Dame this year, do you think that's how he has to introduce himself? Like, hey, I'm Devontae Smith, the other one.
The other one. Maybe that's why he left, because I doubt he has to do that at Notre Dame. He did have to do that at Alabama. He probably got tired of hearing about that.
You think he's just looking around going,
I'm fascinated to see how significant.
Just be Devontae Smith here.
I'm fascinated about Devontae's year at Notre Dame, by the way. I can see it going either way. I can see him being one of their better players, and I can see him not playing very much. I mean, I'm not sure. Now, they recruited him to play a lot because they literally, as so happens in the portal, bought him. So they expect him to play a lot in a significant role. I'm not so 100% sure. I do think Alabama has survived the Husky spot with Deshaun Jones and Drake Kirkpatrick Jr. I'm excited about both of those guys, really. But back to Jack Sammarco, who I wonder if he's related to Cosmo Kramer's good friend, Bob Sacamano.
Bob Sacamano. Yeah. And you were saying he's probably not very expensive in the transfer portal. Whatever he got, that was a lot per catch and per yard. I can tell you that. Yeah. Now, again, we're making fun. One catch, 4 yards.
The statistics are a stat. Better described as a stat. But
that's the thing. What are his stats? Well, it's more like a stat. But
again, they're not bringing him in for that.
No, they're not bringing him in for that. And it's not. I mean, look, if you can't, you got to sort of make fun of it, right? Because if we came up here and said this guy's got all the potential in the world, y'all would tune us out in 5 seconds. Because
that's right.
I mean, there's no way. First of all, he might have all the potential in the world, but we don't know it, and you don't. And the only person who thinks it right now is Mama Sammarco. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean that because all mamas think all their boys have all the potential. And I mean that like he could be really good. He could be. They may have seen something they like. But at the same time, it is very fair if you're a fan of an enemy team, you go, y'all just signed a dude with 1 catch for 4 yards. Yeah. Okay. And we need him because you know what? We don't keep a lot of tight end blocking stats.
Here's stats. Well, we don't on Locked On Bama, but here's who does. And I read this, so hopefully this is correct because I read it not from PFF. But PFF, who does keep such stats, his blocking stats, I think I read that he graded out something like 77% as a blocker, which is actually outstanding for the tight end position. So there are PFF stats out there on his blocking ability that were really good. Clearly, our staff watched a ton of his tape at West Virginia from this past year to determine whether he'd be a fit and is he exactly what they're looking for. Yeah, this is what they need. They want a guy off the bench who can come in to help in the run game because Alabama runs a lot of 12 personnel. They did under Saban, and they ran what I thought was a shocking amount of 12 personnel last season. All things considered, 12 personnel being 1 back and 2 tight ends. They played a lot of 2 tight end sets a year ago. They clearly don't want to abandon that. And when you're going to play 2 tight ends with the ones, you better have about 4 that can play. And think, how many tight ends did Alabama use last year, Luke? C.J. Dupree, Robbie Oost, they played a ton of snaps. Josh Cuevas played a lot of snaps. Danny Lewis, as the 4th tight end, played over 100 snaps last year with the ones. 100 snaps. He was tight end number 4. Right now, you're only comfortable with 2 guys, right? Lewis and Cuevas. probably got to bring in a couple guys because you're probably a little worried. Is Jay Lindsey ready for this? He might be, but he hasn't played. Not really. So they want to bring in a couple of experienced guys to make sure that they have 4 so they can keep on playing 2 tight ends at a time.
Jimmy, before we go to break, I did want to add this. Tyson Bacon, no relation at all to Kaneka Hillshire. He has decommitted from Tennessee, defensive lineman from Hoover, who we've talked about a lot, 3-star that we believe ultimately will wind up a 4-star. Nice player, was committed to Tennessee, and he's decommitted. Now, does that mean a commitment to Alabama is imminent? I don't necessarily think so. I think this is more about, hey, I want to take a step back because I'm getting so much love, and I might have some better options, which totally understandable.
Yeah. I mean, too many kids make their decision too early. I think that's what happened here. I'm not going to project Bacon ends up at Alabama just because the defensive line situation's kind of suddenly crowded, at Alabama. I think they would like to sign 4 or 5 as sort of a max number, and you've already got 2. And Jamarian Matthews is going to play bandit, and Mari Johnson, who's an interior defensive line. So there's only room for maybe 3 more. And who's out there? Tank Jones is out there as a probable bandit. I think they're recruiting him as a Wolf, and I think he's very interested in Wolf, and they might try him at Wolf. It's just Jimmy Stein saying, I think that kid's a bandit, down the road as he adds size. I think that might be his best position because I sort of compare him to LT Overton. I mean, in terms of a prospect. But JJ Finch, they just offered this huge nose guard at Sincere Johnson School yesterday. Elijah Golden likes Alabama a ton. Nolan Wilson, more of a local kid from Mississippi. And then you got Tyson Bacon and Emmanuel Ruffin, 2
Got to go to break.
Linemen.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
A surprise entry into the transfer portal for the LSU men's basketball team.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The transfer portal for basketball closed on Tuesday, the 22nd. But we are still just now learning all of the names that put all of the people that players that put their names in the portal as those become public. And on Wednesday, we learned of another LSU men's basketball player that decided to enter his name into the transfer portal. This was a surprise. It is Curtis Givens. So Givens was the number 10 point guard in the country, number 61 overall player in the country, a 4-star in the class of 2024 out of Montverde. He's from Memphis, finished his career in Montverde in Florida, which is where Ben Simmons notoriously played. And Givens came to LSU as a freshman point guard here in the 2024-2025 season, 6'3", 185, and played in 32 games, started 12 times. All of his starts came against SEC opponents, but he, of course, that was a big part of the late season, a change by Matt McMahon to go to a 4-guard lineup. Well, the productivity from Givens wasn't necessarily there, but that was a guy that they had, they're very high on. Averaged 4.8 points, 1.7 rebounds, 1.6 assists per game. Had 4 games in double figures. His best game of the season was when he scored 15 against ULM back in November. Hit 3 3-pointers in the game at Missouri, also an LSU win. 11 points in the game against Florida back on February 22nd. So you started to see Curtis Givens come along a little bit here in his freshman season, especially late. And that's something that Matt McMahon was pretty open about in February as they were going to the 4-guard lineup. And of course, that performance, that 11-point performance, was against Florida. And then McMahon, a day later, was talking about Givens seeing more playing time at that point in the season.
His role's increased because of the defensive end of the floor. He's got good size and physicality there. He's really helping us, and now you're seeing him play with more confidence on the offensive end. Goes 4 assists, 0 turnovers tonight. Hits 3 threes. Would have liked to have been a higher percentage from the floor, but I think he's just making a lot of winning plays for us.
So he was seeing time against a team that ended up winning the national championship there in Florida. So that was someone that they thought a lot about and highly of. And remember also that when the portal opened, you saw 7 LSU basketball players enter the portal. Victorious Miller, Mike Williams, Corey Chest, Tyrell Ward, Noah Boyd, Damian Collins, that's 6, and now Curtis Givens becomes the 7th player to enter the portal. So you start doing some numbers, and you can look at DJ Thomas from UNLV coming in, Rashad King from Northeastern, Max McKinnon from Portland, Markel Sutton coming in from Omaha, and Michael Nwoko coming in from Mississippi State. So you've added 5, and you've seen now 7 go out. And remember, the thought was you were going to have 3 return. We had learned that Jalen Reed was returning, Robert Miller was returning, and Givens was the 3rd. So in addition to the 6, now 7 guys in the portal, you also had guys out of eligibility. And this was Matt McMahon there during this portal window talking about the 3 guys returning, which included Givens.
They fit the culture that we want to build, high character people that are committed to the hard work. Jalen Reed, just battling through. You saw the jump he made from year 1 to year 2, and then the massive jump from year 2 to year 3 before the unfortunate injury. But I just love that relationship piece of it, seeing him battle through the adversity. He's working like crazy on his rehab and in the weight room, and I expect him to come back better and stronger than ever before. And then I think with Rob Miller, just the unlimited potential there at 6'11", 7'4" wingspan. Had some breakout games, the 19-10 performance against Florida. You saw him shoot the ball from behind the three-point line better when we got into league play. And then courtesy of the experience that he got this year is just priceless.
So that was Matt McMahon, by the way. He was a guest on Tiger Rag Radio when he made those comments. That's where that was from. Let me make sure I give proper attribution. But Matt McMahon was anticipating those 3 guys returning. Now, keep in mind, obviously, in addition to the players going into the portal, you were losing Jordan Sears to graduation. You were losing Jai Bailey. You're losing Cam Carter. So you had guys on this team, Derek Fountain, that were out of eligibility. So you lose those guys who are out of eligibility. Now you have 7 players in the portal. The real question for Matt McMahon now becomes numbers. You've added the 5 guys via the transfer portal. You have 3 freshmen coming in. That puts you at 8. And you have 2 returning, which puts you at 10 now, scholarship players for next season. They can't be done because, look, the scholarship numbers are now going up to 15 for next year. Teams can have 15 scholarship players, but sort of the consensus belief around the SEC is that teams aren't going to go to 15. And that's probably the right decision. Remember, we're going to be going into the NIL revenue share era, where these teams are going to have a capped amount they can spend in revenue share on their basketball roster. Well, if you have a finite amount of resources, let's just say, I'm going to use a round number. Okay, this is a low number. Let's say it's a round number. But let's say you have $1 million of revenue share for your basketball roster. That's probably low, but I'm just using a round number, okay? Let's say you have $1 million in revenue share for your roster. Well, if you have 15 scholarship players, well, now you're dividing that $1 million among 15 players. Everyone's going to get a smaller piece of the pie. Well, what if you had 11 or 12 scholarship players? Well, now everyone gets a bigger piece of the pie. You're not going to have as many players, but you, in theory, you're going to be able to have a higher quality of player because of what you'd be able to pay in committing revenue share. So overwhelmingly, the consensus here seems to be that it's not going to be an issue where you're going to get to 15. But as of right now, again, with 5 via the portal, 3 freshmen coming in and 2 coming back, you're at 10. You can't be done. You've got to get probably 2 more here before it's all said and done. And it makes sense for Givens to go into the portal when LSU added DJ Thomas. DJ Thomas was a top 10 player overall in the country in the portal, the number 8 overall player according to 24/7. He's the best point guard in the portal from UNLV. He is your plug-and-play day one starter, so you brought in a guy who's the best in the country at that position where Curtis Givens plays. So I can sort of understand Givens maybe looking for an opportunity to go elsewhere and play. Not saying I love it or think it's going to be a great move for him, but I can understand the logic and the thinking, what he's getting to there. So Matt McMahon and the basketball Tigers lose another one here in Curtis Givens, which means they still have work to do. The portal window closed on Tuesday, so no more players can go into the portal. But obviously, with all of the players currently in the portal, you can now add those players that have declared, and the Tigers and Matt McMahon still have work to do.